Hey, my name is Daniel. I'm 27. I paint houses for a living. 3 months ago, I accidentally walked in on my married client getting out of the shower, saw the scars her husband couldn't stand to look at, and the first words out of my mouth were, "Then we must marry." The smell of fresh white paint and her expensive perfume, the sound of water dripping in that silent bathroom, the way she whispered, "You saw everything. Nobody will want me now." If you're watching this right now, tell me where you're from in the comments. Because I still don't know if what we did was wrong. I still remember the smell, fresh white paint, and something warmer underneath. Something expensive that shouldn't have been in that room with me. Her perfume. I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Daniel Ward. I'm 27. I paint houses for a living. My brother Ethan runs the business. I just show up with the brushes and try not to screw anything up. We had a flat above a Chinese takeaway on the east side of town. The smell of frying oil got into everything. My clothes, my sheets, even my dreams sometimes. The ceiling had a damp patch that looked like a map of somewhere I'd never been. I needed that Whitmore job. Ethan needed it more. Our mum had died 2 years before, and the bills from her last 6 months in hospital hadn't really gone away. They just sat there in a drawer, getting older but never smaller. So when Ethan told me about the couple in the fancy neighborhood who wanted their master bedroom repainted, I didn't ask questions. I just said yes. The house was on a hill. That's the first thing you need to understand. It wasn't just a different street. It was a different world. Manicured lawns, cars that looked like they'd never seen rain, windows so clean you could see your reflection from across the road. And every single one of those windows had someone watching behind it, especially Mrs. Hartley. She lived across from the Whitmores in a cottage with lace curtains that moved whenever a van pulled up. She was maybe 62, the kind of woman who asks how you are but doesn't wait for the answer. I saw her watching us that first day. Ethan parked the van in the driveway. I carried the toolbox. The doorbell had a soft, expensive chime. Mark Whitmore opened the door. Tall, good suit, handshake like a business meeting. He looked at Ethan when he talked, barely glanced at me. "Come in, let me show you the space." The house was perfect. Too perfect, like nobody actually lived there. White walls, spotless floors, not a single photo frame crooked. He led us upstairs. "Master bedroom needs repainting, maybe some patching. My wife is recovering from a procedure. She's been particular about colors. Want something softer." He opened the door. The room was big. Expensive furniture. A king bed that looked barely slept in. And in the corner, a chair with a folded silk robe draped over it. I noticed the smell then. Paint and dust and her perfume hanging in the air like a question. "My wife is resting," Mark said. "She'll probably stay out of your way." He talked about her like she was part of the furniture. Ethan asked about timelines. Mark checked his watch twice. I walked around the room, taking mental notes. But really I was looking at the little things. A book on the nightstand. A mug with a lipstick stain. The way the robe was folded so carefully, like it hadn't been worn in weeks. And then I saw her. Just for a second. As we were leaving, walking back to the van in the late afternoon light, I glanced up at the bedroom window. A silhouette. A woman standing very still behind the glass. I couldn't see her face, but I felt watched. Ethan slapped my shoulder. "Big job, don't mess it up." I told him I wouldn't. I had no idea that room would change everything. The next morning we came back. Mark was already in his suit, checking his phone by the door. He handed me a key to the side entrance and pointed up the stairs. "Bedroom. Ensuite bathroom if you need water. Claire is around somewhere." He left. Just like that. gone before I even had my toolbox open. I set up dust sheets, opened the paint tins. That sharp, clean smell filled the room. I liked that part, the beginning. When everything was still fixable, there was a machine in the corner, a dehumidifier. It hummed, low and constant, the kind of sound that disappears after a while. But when it stops, you notice. Mid-morning, she appeared. Claire Whitmore. She stood in the doorway in loose gray clothes, not hiding exactly, just careful. Her hair was pulled back. No makeup. She looked tired. But not the tired you get from one bad night. The tired that lives in your bones. "I'm Claire," she said. Soft voice, polite, the way rich people are polite to workers. "Daniel, thank you for coming. I know it's a lot of disruption." She didn't look at me when she said it. Her eyes moved around the room instead, landing on the paint cans, the covered furniture, anywhere but my face. I told her it wasn't a problem. She nodded. Thanked me again. Left. The whole conversation was maybe 30 seconds. But I noticed things. The way she held her left arm close to her body. The wedding ring that looked too tight. How she moved like someone who'd learned to take up less space. I went back to painting. At lunch, I sat in the van with a sandwich and watched the street. Mrs. Hartley was in her front garden, trimming roses that didn't need trimming. She waved. I waved back. "Busy already in there, I see," she called over. Friendly. Too friendly. I told her it was a big job. "Oh, I'm sure it is. Claire must be glad for the company. Poor dear's been so isolated since her procedure." She said it like I should already know. I just nodded. Mrs. Hartley smiled and went back to her roses. But I felt her watching me all the way back to the front door. 2 days passed. Quiet days. I painted. Claire moved through the house like a ghost. We'd exchanged small talk about tea and schedules. Nothing real, but on the 3rd day, something cracked. I was working alone. Ethan had another job, Mark had left early for the office, and Claire was upstairs. I heard her in the hallway, then footsteps on the stairs. She was leaving for some kind of meeting, charity committee, I think she said. But before she left, she stopped in the bedroom doorway. "Daniel?" I turned. "How long do you think all of this will take?" I told her another week, maybe less. She nodded slowly. "That's good, I want it done. I want it to feel different in here." There was something in her voice, something raw. I asked if the color was wrong. "No, the color's fine. It's not the color." She looked at the bed, the chair, the window. "It's just this room, everything that happened here. I thought changing it would help." I didn't know what to say. She caught herself, smoothed her face back into that polite mask. "Sorry, you don't need to hear all that." Then she left. But later that afternoon, I heard them. Mark and Claire, upstairs in another room, raised voices bleeding through the walls. I wasn't trying to listen, but I heard enough. Mark. "I just need time." Claire. "You look away every time." Silence, then a door closing, footsteps, Mark leaving the house without saying goodbye. Claire came downstairs an hour later. Red eyes, too bright smile. "Good day's work?" she asked. I told her yes. She thanked me in that same overly cheerful voice people use when they're barely holding it together. I packed up my brushes and went home. But I couldn't stop hearing it. "You look away every time." The leak happened on a Thursday. Mark had mentioned it in passing. Something about a slow drip behind the ensuite sink. Nothing urgent. But that morning, when I arrived, Mark was rushing out the door. "Check that leak if you have time," he said, And remember, professionalism. This is our home. He stressed the word like it meant something. Then he was gone. I was alone in the house. I could hear the dehumidifier upstairs. Humming. Constant. I went up. Got my tools. Knelt by the ensuite sink and started working on the panel. The leak was worse than he'd said. Water pooling behind the drywall. I called out for Claire. No answer. I figured she'd gone out. So I kept working. Time passed. I don't know how long. Long enough that I forgot to keep listening. And that's when she walked in, through the bedroom door, into the ensuite. She was wearing a robe, loosely tied. She'd just showered, I think. She didn't expect me to be there. I stood up at the exact wrong moment. The belt of her robe slipped. Not all the way. Just enough. I saw the scar. Long. Raised, running along her torso like a map of pain. She froze. I froze. And in that horrible, stretched out second, our eyes met. Hers filled with tears, mine filled with panic. "You saw everything," she whispered, her voice cracked. "Nobody will want me now." It wasn't a question. It was a fact she'd been living with. Alone, in this big, cold house with a husband who looked away. And I didn't think. I just blurted it out. "Then we must marry." The words hung in the air between us. Loud. Stupid. Wrong. The tap kept dripping. The dehumidifier kept humming. And Claire Whitmore stared at me like I'd lost my mind. She laughed. Not a real laugh. Something broken and wet that sounded more like a sob. "What?" I tried to backtrack. "I didn't mean, I was trying to. Is it that bad?" Her voice went very small. "The scar. Is it that bad?" I looked at her. Really looked. And I told her the truth. I told her it wasn't bad. It was just real. That it looked like survival, like strength, like something her body did to keep her alive. I told her I'd spent 6 months watching my mum's body change, watching illness carve her into someone I barely recognized, and I would have given anything just to have her here. Imperfect. Alive. "You're still here," I said quietly. "That's not something to hide." Claire pulled the robe closed, tied the belt tight. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then, "Thank you." 2 words, barely a whisper. She left the bathroom. I finished fixing the leak in silence. The rest of the day was agony. She stayed in different rooms. We spoke only when necessary. Everything was polite, professional, painfully careful. But when I left that evening, I glanced back. She was at the upstairs window again, that same silhouette, watching me leave. And I knew I should have asked Ethan to take over the job. I knew I wouldn't. The next day was worse. She was cold, not angry, just icy, formal. She kept her distance, wore high-necked sweaters, didn't stay in the same room with me for more than a few seconds. I threw myself into the work, taping edges, painting ceilings, measuring for shelves Mark wanted. At lunch, I sat in the van. My friend Ryan texted asking if I wanted to hit the pub later. I said yes. I needed to get out of my own head. That night at the pub, Ryan made jokes, crude ones about posh clients and bored housewives. I laughed, but it felt wrong. He asked if the Whitmores were treating me all right. I told him they were fine. "Bet the wife's fit," he said, grinning. I changed the subject. Later, back in my flat, I did something I'm not proud of. I searched her name online. Claire Whitmore. Photos came up. Charity events. Galas. Her in elegant dresses, standing next to Mark. Smiling. But the smile didn't reach her eyes. Not in any of them. I scrolled through images from 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5, looking for, I don't know what, some version of her that looked happy. I found one. An old photo from maybe a decade ago. Her at a beach somewhere, hair wind-blown, laughing at whoever was taking the picture. No Mark in the frame. I closed the laptop, felt sick with myself. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just a job anymore. The dinner invitation came at the end of that week. Ethan told me. Mark wanted us to come over. Something about extending the contract, maybe repainting the downstairs corridor, the study. Ethan was thrilled. I felt like I'd swallowed glass. The dinner was on a Saturday night. I wore clean clothes. Ethan wore a button-up. We showed up at 7 with a bottle of wine that cost more than I wanted to spend. Mrs. Hartley was there. So was Olivia, Claire's best friend, sharp eyes, sharper tongue, and Mark, playing the perfect host. Claire looked different. Makeup, hair done, a dress that probably cost what I made in a month. She looked like someone performing a role, but when our eyes met across the table, just for a second, the mask slipped. I saw her. The woman from the bathroom, the one who said nobody would want her. Dinner was painful. Mark talked business with Ethan. Olivia told stories. Mrs. Hartley made comments about young men coming and going at all hours, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Under the table, Claire's hand gripped her wine glass too tight. I watched her wedding ring clink against the stem. Clink, 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 like a timer counting down. There was a moment, just one, where everyone else got up to move to the sitting room and Claire and I were alone in the hallway. She was ahead of me, I was behind her, and she turned. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for what you said that day, about everything." I told her she didn't have to thank me. I do. Nobody's looked at me like that in a long time. Like what? Like I'm still a person. Then Olivia called from the other room and the moment shattered. But as we walked back to the van that night, as Ethan talked about contracts and money and opportunity, I couldn't stop thinking about those words. Like I'm still a person. And I knew. I wasn't just the painter anymore. Not in my head. Maybe not in hers either. We fell into a routine after that. Claire suggested it. A professional routine, she called it. I'd work in blocks, then come down for tea at set times so she knew where I was. It was supposed to create boundaries. It did the opposite. Those tea breaks became the best part of my day. We'd sit in the kitchen, her at one end of the table, me at the other, and we'd talk about nothing important, books, music, the absurdity of rich people who wanted hand-painted murals of trees they'd never climbed. She told me about her charity work, how she used to love swimming before things changed. She never said the word surgery. But I knew. I told her about Ethan, about our mum, about growing up in a flat that smelled like other people's dinners. She listened. Really listened. Not the way people listen when they're waiting for their turn to talk. The way you listen when someone's words actually matter. One afternoon, as I finished my tea, her ring clinked against the mug. She flinched, like the sound hurt. I almost asked why, but I didn't. Some questions are too big for a kitchen table. The storm came 2 weeks after I'd started. The weather reports had been warning about it for days. Heavy rain. Possible flooding. Mark mentioned he'd be away. Overnight business trip near the airport. Claire would be alone. I told her I'd head out early if the weather got bad. She said that was fine. But when afternoon hit and the sky went black, the rain came down like a wall. I was finishing one last section of wall when the lights went out. Sudden. Total. The dehumidifier stopped humming. For the first time in weeks, the room was silent. I heard Claire's voice from downstairs. Daniel? Are you all right? I called back that I was fine. She appeared at the bottom of the stairs with her phone torch. Power's out all down the street. Mrs. Hartley just called. It'll be hours. Lightning cracked outside. You should wait, she said. The roads will be flooded. So I waited. She lit candles in the kitchen. We sat at the table. Mugs of tea, shadows dancing on the walls. And for the first time, we talked about real things. I told her about being afraid of the dark as a kid. How Ethan used to leave the bathroom light on for me. She told me about hospitals. How she still couldn't sleep in the dark after her surgery. How Mark kept the bedroom too bright now. But that somehow made it worse. Thunder rolled, rain hammered the windows. And in that candlelit kitchen, in that storm, something shifted. Later, the power flickered. Came back, died again, came back for good. Claire stood up, said she'd go change into something warmer. 10 minutes later, I heard her voice from the hallway upstairs. Small, uncertain. Daniel? I'm sorry. I need help. I climbed the stairs. She was standing outside the bedroom, wearing a dress with a zipper at the back. It's stuck, near the scar. I can't reach. She turned away from me, waited. I stepped closer. My hands shook a little as I found the zipper, adjusted it, careful, slow. My fingers brushed the fabric over her scar. She went very still. He said he couldn't unsee it, she whispered. I kept working the zipper. Didn't stop, didn't pull away. The first time, after the surgery, he looked at me and said he just needed time to adjust. The zipper came free. I didn't move. Neither did she. That was 8 months ago, she said. I told her about my mum, about watching her body change, about the tubes and scars and how none of it mattered. I told her I would have given anything just to have her alive, imperfect, scarred, anything. You're here, I said. That's what matters. Claire turned around. Her eyes were wet. We stood there, close enough that I could smell her perfume, far enough that nothing happened. Then the dehumidifier hummed back to life. The spell broke. We went downstairs, sat on the sofa with more tea, talked about stupid things, laughed too much. When the rain finally eased, it was past 11. I grabbed my jacket. She walked me to the door. Thank you, she said, for staying. I told her it was no trouble, but as I walked down the driveway, I saw Mrs. Hartley's curtains move, even in the dark, always watching, and I knew this was going to get complicated. The next morning, Mrs. Hartley was waiting. She stopped me on the path before I reached the door. Quite a storm last night, I agreed. I saw lights on very late. Hope everything was all right? She smiled. Concerned. Kind. But her eyes were calculating. Just waiting out the rain, I told her. Of course. Still, Claire is alone so much. It's good she has company, even if it's, well, you know. I didn't know, but I could guess. Inside, Claire was different, guarded again, careful. She thanked me for helping during the storm, but kept physical distance, stayed on the other side of every room, like she was terrified of what last night meant. I worked. She disappeared to a charity meeting. That evening, Mark came home early. I was packing up when he walked into the bedroom. How's it coming along? I told him fine. He looked around, nodded. Hope the storm didn't cause any trouble. His tone was light, but his eyes weren't. No trouble, I said. He smiled. Good. Wouldn't want Claire to be uncomfortable with all the time you're spending here. It wasn't a question. It was a warning. I left as soon as I could, walked down the path in the dusk light, and saw Mrs. Hartley's curtains twitch just once. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying it, the zipper, her whisper, the way we stood too close in that bedroom while the storm raged outside. And I knew we were crossing lines neither of us could uncross, but I went back the next day anyway, and the day after that, because some doors, once opened, you don't know how to close. Over the next 2 days, Mark worked from home. That had never happened before. He sat up in the study with his laptop, but every hour or so, he'd walk past the bedroom, check on progress, make small talk. It felt like surveillance. Claire kept 2 other rooms. When we were all in the kitchen at lunchtime, Mark made a joke. "Must be nice," he said, cutting into his sandwich. "Having young men around the house." He looked at Claire. "Bit of eye candy for you, darling." He laughed. Claire went very still. I focused on my food. "I'm joking, of course," Mark added. "Daniel's been nothing but professional. Haven't you, Daniel?" I said yes. "Good. That's good. Wouldn't want people getting the wrong idea." The rest of lunch was silent. Later that afternoon, I heard them in the ensuite. Mark's voice. Sharp. Complaining about budgets, surgery costs, how much everything was adding up. "You're always needing something," he said. I couldn't hear Claire's reply, but I heard the silence after. The kind that swallows you whole. When I left that day, Mark was at the door. "Thanks for your discretion, Daniel, and your professionalism." He stressed that word again. Professionalism. Like he was reminding me of something I'd forgotten. I walked to the van with my chest tight, knowing a line had been drawn. Saturday came. The weekend, no work. Ethan had rented a stall at the town fair, promoting the business, handing out flyers. I helped him set up, smiled at families, pretended everything was normal. And then I saw them. Claire and Mark, walking across the green with Olivia and Mrs. Hartley. Mark had his hand on Claire's back, guiding her, performing the role of devoted husband. Claire looked tired, but she smiled, waved at people, played her part. We almost crossed paths at the coffee stand. Almost, but Olivia saw me first. She gave me this look, half knowing, half warning. Then Mrs. Hartley leaned close to Mark, whispered something while glancing my way. Mark followed her gaze. Found me. Smiled. Then walked to our stall. "Ethan!" Big handshake, praise for our work, talk about future projects. He was marking territory. I stood there in my paint-stained jeans and felt like a kid caught stealing. From a distance, Claire glanced over. Our eyes met. Just for a heartbeat. Then Mark took her arm and led her away. The fair noise faded. And I understood. Other people had started to see it. Whatever we were doing, whatever we weren't doing, it was becoming visible. Monday morning came too fast. I woke with a knot in my stomach, drove to the house expecting, I don't know, something. Mark was waiting in the kitchen, still in his suit, not yet leaving. "Claire, could you give us a moment?" She left without a word. He led me to the study, closed the door. "Daniel, I want to be clear about something." I nodded. "This is a professional arrangement. You're here to paint, that's all." "I understand." "Do you?" "Because people talk. Mrs. Hartley, the neighbors. They notice when vans stay late, when lights are on during storms." My mouth went dry. I don't want my wife made uncomfortable by gossip or by inappropriate attention. Nothing inappropriate has happened. He stared at me for a long time. "I hope not, for your sake, and for the reputation of your business." He opened the door. Dismissed me. I went upstairs. Claire was in the hallway. Pale. She didn't ask what was said. She already knew. That day she was ice, formal, distant, every word measured and safe. When I left that evening, she stayed in another room. Didn't come to the door. And I knew. I knew things were ending. The note was waiting the next day. Claire opened the door with an expression I couldn't read. She led me to the kitchen. A printed email sat on the table. From Mark to Ethan. Concluding the contract earlier than planned. Personal reasons. Remaining balance to be settled immediately. Claire slid me an envelope. Payment for my hours. "Thank you for your work," she said. Voice flat, professional. I asked if this was what she wanted. "It's what's best." "For who?" She didn't answer. I went upstairs one last time to collect my tools. The bedroom looked finished, my work done, walls freshly painted with that soft color she'd chosen. The dehumidifier hummed. The bed was perfectly made, everything neat, clean, closed. As I carried the last toolbox downstairs, I looked up. Claire stood at the top of the stairs, gripping the banister, watching, but not moving, not speaking. I wanted to say something. Ask her if this was really it. Tell her, I don't know what. But she turned away before I could find the words. I walked out into bright afternoon sunlight, got in the van, looked back once. Mrs. Hartley's curtains flickered, and I drove away. In my head, I told myself that was the end. The painter finished the job. Left. Everyone moved on. But inside, I knew better. This was just the beginning of something I couldn't fix with paint. The week after was hell. I worked other jobs with Ethan. Small apartments, office repaints. Nothing that mattered. I botched a detail on someone's trim. Something I never do. Ethan asked if I was all right. I lied. At night, I lay in bed replaying everything. The bathroom, the storm, the zipper. Her voice. Nobody will want me now. My voice. Then we must marry. I kept opening her social media profile, scrolling through photos I'd already seen, looking for... what? Some sign she was thinking about me too? Ryan dragged me to the pub one night. The noise felt wrong. The jokes felt hollow. He teased me about being quiet. For a man who works in rich people's bedrooms, I almost snapped. Caught myself. Turned it into a joke. On the way home, I took the bus route that passed her neighborhood. Got off one stop early. Told myself it was a shortcut. Walked past the entrance to her cul-de-sac. Just far enough to see the glow of her upstairs window. Then I turned back. Feeling pathetic. Feeling like I'd left something unfinished in that house. Not the paint, something else. Days bled together. I kept seeing things that looked like her. A woman on the bus with the same coat. Perfume in a shop that smelled like her bathroom. A charity event poster with her name in small print at the bottom. Each time my stomach flipped. Then, one afternoon, picking up supplies at the hardware store, I saw Olivia. She was at the checkout. Saw me immediately. Daniel. Not a question. A statement. Olivia. Funny running into you here. It didn't feel funny. She paid for her items. Waited for me outside. How have you been? She asked. Fine. You? I'm not the one we're worried about. Silence. Claire's had a rough few weeks, Olivia said carefully. Mark's been traveling a lot. She's been... quiet. I didn't know what to say. Some people pay attention when they feel seen for the first time in years, Olivia continued. It wakes something up, makes everything else feel smaller. She looked at me. Really looked. Just be careful, both of you. Then she left. I drove home with my hands shaking. That night, I typed out a message. I hope you're okay. The walls turned out well, stared at it, deleted it, went to bed with the unsent words still in my drafts. 2 more weeks passed. Ethan and I took on an office repaint. Big project, fluorescent lights, gray walls, impersonal and cold, the opposite of that bedroom. I threw myself into the work. Routine, ladders, the smell of cheap paint instead of expensive perfume. There was a barista at a cafe near the office. Friendly. Pretty. She wrote my name on cups, smiled when I came in. I smiled back. But I never let it go further. Couldn't. I was somewhere else in my head. Ethan suggested a weekend trip once we finished. Get out of town. I said maybe. Didn't mean it. One night I scrolled through my phone, found Claire's contact details from old work messages, hovered over the delete button, almost pressed it, then locked the phone instead, tossed it onto the bed. I wasn't done with that house, no matter what I pretended. Wednesday afternoon, 3 weeks after I'd last seen her. I finished early at the office job, walked through town. At a crosswalk I saw them, Claire and Olivia, on the opposite side of the street. Claire looked thinner, a little pale, but put together, always put together. Olivia was talking, trying to make her laugh. My heart stopped. I ducked into a shop doorway, half hiding, half hoping she'd see me. Olivia noticed first. She held my gaze, didn't look away, said something quiet to Claire. Claire turned, saw me. We stared at each other across the street. People walked between us. Traffic passed, the light changed, but for that moment, nothing else existed. Then the crowd moved and they were gone. I stood there breathing hard. Went home. That evening my phone rang. Unknown landline number. I answered. Silence. Then, a sound in the background. That hum. The dehumidifier. I knew it immediately. Hello? I said. Nothing. Then the line cut. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my phone. She'd called from that bedroom, from the room I'd painted, from the place where everything had started. She hadn't said a word, but she'd reached out. Days passed. I worked, avoided her neighborhood, told myself I'd imagined the call, wrong number, coincidence. But the dreams got worse. I'd be back in that bedroom, painting the same wall over and over, never getting it right, the color always wrong. Her voice behind me. You saw everything. I'd wake up with the smell of paint and her perfume mixed together in my head. One night, I couldn't sleep at all. Sat in my flat, scrolling my phone. Past midnight, past 1 a.m., the room dark except for the screen. Then, 2:07 a.m. My phone lit up. A text. Unknown number. But I knew. The wall is still the wrong color. 7 words. I stared at them. Read them again. Again. My hands shook. The wall, the bedroom, our conversations about colors and change and things that never quite heal right. It wasn't about the paint. After a long moment, I typed back. I can fix it if you want me to. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Finally, marks away for 2 nights. I could use a professional opinion? Professional. The word we'd used to build walls between us. Now it was an invitation. I sat there in the 2 a.m. dark of my cramped flat, knowing nothing good ever starts at 2:07 in the morning, knowing I was going to go anyway. Tomorrow evening? I typed. Yes. 1 word. I set my phone down. Didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next day dragged. I worked the office job. Barely heard Ethan talking. Counted down hours. By 6 that evening, I'd changed into clean clothes. Simple. Nothing that tried too hard. Took the bus to her neighborhood. The cul-de-sac looked the same. The Whitmore house stood quiet on its hill. The porch light was on. Steady. Waiting. I walked up the path. She opened the door before I could ring twice. Hi, she said. Soft, nervous. Hi. She let me in. We stood in the hallway for a moment, neither of us sure how to start. Should we? She gestured upstairs. I nodded. The bedroom looked exactly as I'd left it. Same wall color, same furniture placement, the dehumidifier humming in the corner, like no time had passed, like she'd kept it frozen, waiting. We walked around the room pretending to look at the paint, discussing light angles, small chips that weren't really there, using professional language as armor. But slowly, the walls came down. "I panicked," she said finally. "After the fair, after Mark's talk with you, I let him end the contract because I was terrified." "Of what?" "Of losing everything. The house, my reputation, the only stability I've ever known." She looked at me. "Of what people would say if they knew I spent weeks having tea with a 27-year-old painter who made me feel more seen than my husband has in 8 months. I told her I'd thought about the house every day since I left. "This room? You." The word hung there. She stepped closer. "You were kind about the one thing I hate most about myself," she whispered. "It wasn't kindness, it was honesty." We stood by the wall I'd painted. Close, not touching. "What are we doing?" she asked. "I don't know. I can't leave him. I can't blow up my life." "I'm not asking you to." "Then what?" I didn't have an answer. Because the truth was, we'd already done it. The thing we were trying not to do. We'd built something in this room between the paint fumes and the dehumidifier hum and the weight of everything unsaid. And you can't unbuild that, even if you never touch, even if you never kiss. Some connections don't need contact to change you. We went downstairs for tea. Old routine, sat at the kitchen table like we had dozens of times before. But this time we talked about real things. Her marriage, my life, the fact that nothing physical had happened between us, and how it still felt like betrayal. "The 'we must marry' line," I said. "It's haunted me." "Me too. I meant it, in that moment. That stupid, panicked moment, I meant it." She looked down at her mug. "I know." Silence. "I'm not leaving Mark," she said again. "I can't. This house, my life, everything I've built." "I know. But you—" She stopped, started again. "You saw me. Really saw me. Not the version I perform for charity dinners, not the wife who's recovering gracefully. Just me." "You saw me too," I said. "Not as the help. Not as the working-class kid who doesn't belong in houses like this. Just me." We sat there with our cooling tea. And agreed, without saying it out loud, that what we'd given each other was real, even if it couldn't become more, even if we had to let it stay unfinished. At the door, she stepped close. Not in front of me. Beside me. She rested her forehead against my shoulder. Just for a few seconds. The only physical contact we ever had. "Thank you," she whispered. Then she pulled back. "If the porch light ever blinks twice," she said, voice shaking slightly, "it just means I'm awake, thinking about the wall." I understood. A signal with no expectation. Just acknowledgement that I was still real to her, that she was still real to me. I walked down the quiet cul-de-sac, the night air cool on my face. Behind me, the porch light blinked, once, twice, then steady again. I smiled sadly, kept walking. Months passed after that night. The business got better. Ethan and I took on bigger jobs, houses in different neighborhoods, none quite like hers. I had conversations with other women, the barista, a friend of Ryan's, small, tentative things that might have become something. But I was careful, cautious, knowing part of me was still on that cul-de-sac. Sometimes work took me near her area. When it did, I'd choose routes that passed the end of her street. Most evenings, the porch light was just steady. Normal. But on a few nights, Late, when I was walking home, it would blink twice as I passed. A quiet signal. No text, no call, no follow-up. Just acknowledgement. I remember. I remember too. From a distance, I'd see her sometimes, getting into a car dressed for charity events, walking with Olivia and a dog I'd never seen before, standing at the bedroom window with a mug in her hand. Mark was beside her sometimes. Sometimes not. From where I stood, the marriage looked unchanged, intact, performing its role. I thought about the wall a lot, how I'd never gone back to repaint it, how it stayed imperfect, that soft color she'd chosen, close to right but not quite. And I realized that was the point. Some things don't get fixed. They just stay a little bit broken, a little bit open, reminding you of what almost was. One night, months later, I stood at a bus stop after finishing a job. The route that passed her street. I could see the glow of the Whitmore porch light in the distance. Steady. Just a light. Nothing more. I turned away to catch my bus. And as the bus pulled off into the dark, I thought about her. About that bathroom. That storm. That moment with the zipper when I touched the scar her husband couldn't look at. About being wanted versus being kept. How they're not the same thing. She'd kept her house, her marriage, her safe, expensive life. I'd kept my flat above the takeaway, my brother's struggling business, my ordinary, paint-stained existence. We hadn't kept each other, but we'd kept the memory, the possibility, the door that never quite closed. Some nights, when I can't sleep, I think about that bedroom. The dehumidifier humming, her perfume mixing with fresh paint, the sound of her wedding ring clinking against the mug. And I wonder if she's awake too. If she ever stands at that window, if she ever looks at the wall and sees me in it. I was just the painter who saw what her husband couldn't look at. And somewhere between the first brushstroke and that broken joke about marrying her, we both learned that being wanted and being kept are not the same thing. But sometimes, on certain nights when the light blinks twice in the dark, being remembered is enough. Some doors don't close, they just stay quietly, dangerously, a little bit open.